Imagine spending 10 hours reading a book, only to forget almost everything a week later. It happens to nearly everyone. You feel productive while reading, but deep down, you know the information isn't sticking. And here's the scary part. The problem usually isn't your memory, it's your learning system. Today, we're going to fix that.
Most people treat reading like collecting information. They highlight pages, save quotes, and move from one book to another as fast as possible. But your brain doesn't reward consumption. It rewards processing. If information isn't connected, rehearsed, or applied, your brain quietly deletes it to save energy. That's why people forget entire books after only a few days. There are two stages to learning: consumption and digestion. Consumption is reading, watching, or listening. Digestion is thinking, connecting, practicing, and reflecting. Most people spend 90% of their time consuming and almost zero time digesting. That's like swallowing food without allowing your body to absorb nutrients. Finishing books quickly feels satisfying because your brain gets a small dopamine reward. But finishing a book is not the same as learning it. In fact, reading slower and thinking more deeply often leads to far better results. One deeply understood chapter can change your life more than 10 books you barely remember. One of the most famous examples of memory was Kim Peek, the real-life inspiration behind the movie Rain Man. He could remember massive amounts of information after reading it once. Scientists discovered that his brain formed unusual connections that allowed information to travel differently than in most people. Now, you don't need a superhuman brain to improve your memory. What matters is building stronger neural connections. Every time you connect an idea to something meaningful, emotional, or practical, your brain becomes more likely to keep it. Memory is less about storage and more about connection. One powerful framework for learning is the PACER system. Let's start with procedural knowledge, learning through action. Think about riding a bicycle. You didn't learn it by reading instructions. You learned by practicing, failing, adjusting, and repeating. Your brain remembers what it uses. The earlier you practice information, the stronger it becomes in your memory. That's why students who immediately solve problems after learning a concept improve much faster than students who only reread notes. Action tells the brain, this matters. Keep this information.
Here's something shocking. Studies show people can forget most of what they consume within days if they don't review or apply it. Think about how many videos, articles, and books you've consumed this year. Now ask yourself, how much actually changed your behavior? Learning without digestion creates the illusion of progress. Deep learners pause often. They ask questions like, how does this connect to what I already know? Or where could I use this in real life? Those moments of reflection are where understanding begins. The goal isn't to read mere pages. The goal is to build more meaning. One of the fastest ways to understand something difficult is through analogies. Your brain loves patterns and familiar comparisons. For example, learning can be compared to planting seeds. Reading plants the seed, but reflection, practice, and repetition are what help it grow. When you connect new ideas to old experiences, your brain creates stronger pathways. That's why teachers often use stories and examples, because isolated facts are weak, but connected ideas are memorable. The more links you create, the easier information becomes to recall later.
Real understanding isn't memorizing definitions. It's knowing why something works, when to use it, and how it connects to other ideas. This is called conceptual knowledge. And once you develop it, learning becomes easier because every new idea has somewhere to attach itself. Mind mapping is powerful because it mirrors the way the brain naturally organizes information. Instead of storing ideas in isolated boxes, your brain builds networks. Visual maps help you see relationships, patterns, and missing gaps in understanding much faster than traditional linear notes. The smartest learners don't just collect information, they organize it. They build systems of understanding. When ideas connect together into one big mental map, your brain no longer sees information as random facts. It sees meaning, structure, and patterns. Another mistake people make is relying entirely on memory. Great learners build external systems, organize notes, folders, summaries, and databases. This reduces mental overload and allows the brain to focus on thinking instead of constantly trying to remember everything from scratch. Here's the truth. Rereading feels comfortable, but struggling to recall information is what actually strengthens memory. When you test yourself, solve problems, or explain ideas out loud, your brain becomes more efficient at retrieving information later. Mastery takes time. The people who become experts aren't always the smartest, they're usually the most consistent. They return to the material again and again, improving their understanding layer by layer until the knowledge becomes automatic.
So here's the big idea. Stop measuring learning by how much you consume. Measure it by how much you can explain, apply, and remember. Read slower, think deeper, practice more, because knowledge only becomes powerful when it changes the way you think and act.